began working it, having read various books, it was very much to try and tell the story of those left behind, the human side of the tragedy more than anything else. And it came from an idea by a gentleman called John Nimmo, who was from Dundee and was directing Mother of All Peoples, the Mary Slessor musical, down here. And John came up with this idea. So I wrote it with a lady called Mary Payton, who did the music, who sadly can't be with us today, but Malcolm Dowie's joined us today to take over that particular role. We launched it in September 2005, and we did it in the Gardyne, and then we took it to the Byre in St Andrews, and then we took it up to Aberdeen, and then back to Dundee Rep. And it was one of the most pleasurable things I'd ever been involved with. We kept the same 6 of a cast, 4 of whom are back with us today, and it just was a really nice piece to be involved with. It's basically the story of 3 women from very different walks of life who have nothing in common until the day that they lose men and the disaster. They are all fictional. We tried to stay away from telling anyone's real story in case we upset anyone along the line. But yeah, hopefully they are representative. The one thing it is factual is the title, which was a quote that was in the Dundee Courier, who interviewed a lady who had lost her husband and asked what she'd been left with, and she'd been left with 5 pound and Twa Bairns. And that's where the title came from. It's basically a very brief, so you just understand a little bit better about it. It's about 3 women, one called Mary, who was played by Carol, who's just joined us today, Carol Player, and her husband Alec, who she kind of nags and tries to get them out of this slum in Dundee, and he ends up having to go way down to Tyneside to get work, and he's on his way back at Hogmanay. The second pairing, sorry, Alex played by Scott McCroovey, sorry, who's come all the way from Carlisle to do it, so I kind of forget his name. The second pairing is of Grace Steele, a lady widowed and left with a 2-year-old who she brings up and she's terribly proud of, and eventually comes from Dundee and gets into Edinburgh University. And the 2 parts there are Sue Robertson and Alec Watt. And finally, a very different pairing, Rebecca and Bernard Lawrence, who are from Broughty Ferry, except Bernard spent all his life out in India working for the army, and Rebecca's quite happily made a new life for herself in Broughty Ferry, and is less than impressed when he says he's got to retire and come back home. And so we have that as a background, and we interweave the 3 stories. And it all begins back in 1878, just at the time of the greatest bridge being opened.
On the last day of May, in this year of our Lord, 1878, the longest bridge in the world, linking the ancient city of Dundee with the Kingdom of Fife, was officially opened. Well, sadly, I couldn't be there, for you see, I was in India serving Queen and country. At my request, however, my wife Rebecca attended the event and faithfully reported to me. She recounted that it was a splendid affair, attended by a large cross-section of the Dundee's populace, that the sun shone, that the bands played, and that the crowds thronged the esplanade.
Mother, what are you looking at?
Well, I'm trying to see if I can spot Queen Victoria.
The Queen's not coming.
I'm sure she'll be here.
She won't, it's said in the papers.
You shouldn't have believed everything you read in the Courier.
It wasn't just in the Courier, it was in the other papers too.
I'm sure she'll be here.
What do you think of the bridge?
The bridge?
Aye, it's the big metal thing between the river and the sky.
Oh, aye, aye.
Well, what do you think of it?
Well, it's very nice.
It's nice. It took hundreds of men 6 years to build it, and all you could say is it's nice.
It's the longest bridge that's ever been built. It's almost 1 mile wide. Huge ships can pass beneath it, even at high tide. It's built in 85 great spans.
Oh, I think I see the Queen.
It's the greatest bridge.
The greatest bridge. The greatest bridge that the world has ever seen.
I've never seen on anything like it. It seems to touch the sky. They must have used enough of steel to build it quite that high. There's 12 million rivets.
Be a terrible job to clean.
It's the greatest bridge.
The greatest bridge. The greatest bridge that the world has ever seen. I received a communique from India. Attend event and report it implored. My luncheon appointment I cancelled. Well, orders from the general are not to be ignored. So I ended up here feeling rather overdressed. But I'll admit the bridge is splendid, and I'm not easily impressed. It's a gateway to a bright new land that's far beyond the beach.
A land across the river where man's web doesn't reach.
A land of milk and honey, free from poverty and guilt. It's the greatest bridge, the greatest bridge, the greatest bridge that ever has been built. Well, this has been my wonderful, most momentous day. To be here to watch the fast train cross the mighty Tay. The builders should be honoured, they're worthy of 3 cheers. It's the greatest bridge, the greatest bridge, the greatest